I always thought mornings in our house were predictable, almost painfully so. The same soft hum of the old refrigerator. The same pale light leaking through the sheer curtains. The same quiet groan from the wooden floorboards as I dragged myself into the kitchen, half asleep, half functioning. But that morning, something felt off before I even opened my eyes. I remember lying there, listening. The silence was too complete, too delicate, like the air itself was waiting for something to happen. Usually, I'd hear Daniel moving around by now, pacing, humming, sometimes arguing with himself over which shirt to wear. He hated being late for work. He hated rushing even more, but that morning, nothing, the absence echoed louder than any sound could have. I pushed myself up, rubbing my eyes. The bed beside me was cold. Not just empty, cold. As if he had been gone for hours. A strange ache bloomed in my chest, a soft twisting that I tried to ignore. Daniel was a grown man, not a child who needed constant monitoring. People left early sometimes. People had errands. People existed beyond the tight little world of our shared routines, and yet, he never left without saying goodbye. When I walked into the kitchen, I noticed his mug on the counter, still unwashed, still holding the faint scent of cinnamon and coffee. But his keys were gone. His jacket too. It was as if he'd slipped out of the house in the dark without wanting anyone to notice. That wasn't like him, not at all. I tried to shake it off, tried to tell myself I was overthinking again. I poured myself a glass of water, letting the coolness ground me. Outside, the sky was a dull grey, thick clouds swelling like they were hiding secrets of their own. The air smelled like rain, the kind that arrives suddenly and without apology. That's when I saw it. A small scrap of fabric on the floor near the hallway, dark, silky, unfamiliar. At first I thought it was part of Daniel's tie collection, the ones he rarely touched but kept just in case. But when I picked it up, the fabric was softer than any tie he owned. More delicate. More intimate, and it definitely didn't belong to either of us. My chest tightened. I heard my own heartbeat in my ears. Why was something like this in our house, and why did it smell faintly, barely, of cologne I didn't recognize? I swallowed hard, forcing myself to breathe. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it belonged to a friend who had visited. Maybe it fell from a shopping bag. Maybe I was letting my imagination run wild again, maybe. But as I stood there in that half-lit hallway, holding a stranger's garment between my fingers, I couldn't ignore the feeling crawling up my spine, the sense that something had shifted overnight, quietly but unmistakably, something Daniel didn't want to tell me, something I wasn't supposed to find. And then, from the back of the house, I heard a soft thud. A door closing. Or opening. I couldn't tell. I froze. Was I still alone? He just stood in the middle of his room, arms folded tightly across his chest, as if holding himself together. The lamp on his desk cast a warm pool of yellow light, but everything outside that circle remained in shadow. His room had always been neater than mine, organized shelves, folded clothes, stacked notebooks, but tonight it felt unsettled. Like the air itself was shifting with every breath he took. I shut the door behind me, letting the click echo through the silence. "You're scaring me," I said quietly. He gave a humorless smile. "Trust me, I've been scaring myself." I waited. I didn't want to push him, but the tension was coiled so tightly inside me, I could almost hear it humming. Outside, the rain had intensified, splashing against the windows in frantic bursts. Thunder rumbled somewhere in the distance. Ian finally sank onto the edge of his bed, elbows on his knees. He looked exhausted, dark circles beneath his eyes, hair uncombed, shoulders tense. I'd never seen him like this. Not even during exam season when he used to pull all-nighters. "You remember what Mom said this morning?" he murmured, about taking care of each other. I frowned. "Yeah." "Why?" His jaw tightened. "They know." I blinked. "No, what?" He didn't answer immediately. He just rubbed his palms together slowly, like he was trying to warm them, or distract himself, and then he said something that made the back of my neck go cold. "They know I've been hiding something." A pause, something about the way he said it, soft, trembling, sent a wave of unease through me. "What are you hiding?" I asked carefully, his fingers stilled. "That's the problem," he said with a shaky laugh. "I don't even know how to say it without sounding insane." I stepped closer. "Ian, you're my twin. You can tell me anything." He lifted his head, and for the first time that night, his eyes met mine fully, and I felt something jolt inside my chest. His eyes were glistening, desperate, pleading. "I wish it were that easy," he whispered. I sat down beside him, close enough for our shoulders to brush. A quiet static passed between us, strange and familiar at the same time. Twins are supposed to feel connected, same birthdays, same habits, same jokes, but this was different. Sharper. Heavier, like he was terrified that whatever he was about to say would break something between us. Ian took a deep breath. "The past few months, I haven't been myself," he murmured. "I've been avoiding everyone. You. Mom. Dad. My friends." I nodded slowly. It was true. He'd been withdrawing, staying quiet during meals, skipping hangouts, shutting his door more often. "I thought it was stress," I said. "Exams, college, it's not that." His voice cracked. "I wish it were that." Thunder rolled again, long, low, vibrating the floor beneath us. He swallowed hard. "It started with dreams." I felt my heartbeat pick up. "Dreams about?" I asked softly. His face flushed slightly, though he looked away before I could fully read the expression. "Dreams where I'm saying things I shouldn't be saying," he whispered. "Feeling things I shouldn't be feeling." My breath caught. He wasn't being explicit, but something about the way his voice trembled told me the truth was dangerously close to a line neither of us had acknowledged before. "Ian, what kind of feelings?" I asked, though my voice felt unsteady. He pressed his hands over his face. "I didn't choose them, okay?" I tried to ignore it. I pretended it was nothing. But every time I thought it was gone, it came back stronger. A strange, sinking pressure filled my stomach. "And then Mom noticed," he continued. "She asked why I'd been acting strange. Why I'd been avoiding you most of all." I blinked. "Avoiding me?" He nodded slowly. "Because I didn't trust myself around you." The air left my lungs for a moment. Neither of us breathed. The rain hammered against the window. The room felt smaller, the shadows darker, the air warmer. My own pulse thundered loudly in my ears. "Ian," I whispered, unsure what I was even trying to say. He shook his head quickly. "Don't. Please. I know how it sounds. I know it's wrong. I know I'm wrong." His voice cracked on the last word. I'd never seen him unravel like this, never seen his composure split open like something fragile under pressure. Instinctively, I reached out and touched his arm. He flinched slightly, then, slowly, let his shoulders drop. "You're not wrong," I said quietly. "You're just scared." He let out a trembling breath. "I'm terrified." Another pause. "Every time you walk into a room," he whispered, "I feel this tension. This pull. Like I'm supposed to tell you something I'm not allowed to say. And I hate myself for it." My chest tightened. I had no idea what to say. No idea how to comfort him without making things more complicated. But Ian wasn't finished. "Last night, before our parents left," he continued, "Mom came into my room. She said she's been sensing something. She kept asking if I'd been fighting with you. If something happened between us." I couldn't lie. She looked at me like she knew I wasn't telling the whole truth. My skin prickled. "What did you tell her?" I whispered. "That I didn't want to hurt you," he murmured. "Or ruin things between us." The room felt impossibly silent. Then she said something strange, Ian added, voice barely audible. "She told me some people carry secrets their whole lives, and some secrets eventually force their way out." A chill ran down my spine. "What does that even mean?" I asked. "I don't know," he exhaled. "But she and Dad left this morning without explanation. And the way they looked at us," he shook his head. It was like they knew we weren't okay. I let the information sink in, slowly, heavily. Ian, I said gently, whatever you're carrying, you don't have to carry it alone. He turned toward me again, and the anguish in his eyes made my throat tighten. I wish that were true, he whispered. But I'm scared that once you know, you'll hate me. Something inside me twisted. I could never hate you. You say that now, he murmured, but you don't know what I'm hiding. I felt a knot forming in my stomach. Ian, tell me. He looked at me for a long moment, like he was memorizing my face, bracing himself for whatever came next. I can't tell you here, he finally whispered. Not in this room. Then where? He hesitated. The attic. I frowned. Why the attic? Because that's where it started, he said quietly. And if I'm going to confess this, you need to see something. The way he said confess made something deep inside me stir, fear, curiosity, dread, all tangled into one. A sudden gust of wind rattled the window, and for a moment I thought the lights might flicker out. Ian stood up, wiping his palms on his jeans. Come with me. It wasn't really a question. I rose slowly from the bed. The hallway felt even darker now. The house creaked with the storm outside, and the narrow staircase leading to the attic seemed colder than the rest of the house. Ian walked ahead of me, each step surprisingly steady despite the tremor in his voice earlier. My own heartbeat felt loud, echoing in the tight stairwell. Halfway up, Ian paused. You sure you want to know? He asked without turning around. Because once you do, nothing between us will ever be the same. I swallowed hard. I want the truth, I said. He nodded once, just once, then pushed open the attic door. A cold draft blew against us. The smell of dust and old wood filled the air. The single hanging bulb flickered weakly, casting strange shapes across the stacks of boxes and covered furniture. Ian stepped inside and then he pointed to a specific box in the corner. A small one. Worn. Taped unevenly. That's what I found, he said softly. And that's when everything changed. My breath hitched. What's inside it? I whispered. He turned to me, eyes shining with fear and something else, something I couldn't name, something about us. He whispered, something Mom and Dad hid. The storm boomed overhead, and for a moment, I couldn't tell if my shaking hands were from the cold or from the truth waiting inside that box. If you want, I can continue immediately with the climactic moment, 800 to 1,200 words, where the box is opened and the shocking secret reshapes everything. Ian stood frozen beside the small, dusty box, as if touching it again might break him open completely. The attic bulb flickered overhead, throwing quick flashes of light across his face. He wasn't just nervous. He looked haunted. Like whatever was inside that box wasn't just a secret, it was a wound. Ian, I whispered, stepping closer, tell me what this is. He shook his head. I need you to see it first. His hands hovered over the lid but didn't touch it. His breath shuddered, his shoulders trembled. Something about his hesitation terrified me more than anything else tonight. Are Mom and Dad in danger? I asked quietly. No, his voice cracked. It's us who are. I swallowed hard. Open it. He didn't move. Instead, he whispered something that made my stomach twist. I found this 2 weeks ago. I wasn't looking for anything, I was just trying to find my old school books. This box was behind everything else, covered in so much dust it had to be here for years. He swallowed. And the moment I saw what was inside, everything about my life started feeling wrong. Wrong how? He finally stepped back, almost offering the box to me with a trembling gesture. You open it. I hesitated, my fingers tingling with dread as I reached for the old cardboard. The tape peeled with a dry crack, and when I lifted the lid, a faint scent of old paper drifted out. Inside were documents. A few folded letters. An envelope yellowed with age, and on top, a photograph of Ian and me as toddlers. But something was off. The image was slightly faded, but clear enough to see what my mind refused to process. I was in the picture, Ian was in the picture, but we were not standing together. We weren't even in the same setting. They were 2 separate photos, taped side by side. My heartbeat faltered. Ian, I murmured, what is this? He closed his eyes. Look closer. I did. Different backgrounds, the different lighting, the different people holding us. Why are our baby pictures separate? I asked, a slow chill crawling up my spine. Because we weren't born together, he whispered. The attic seemed to shrink around us. I stared at him, unblinking. That's not possible. We're twins. We're not, he said, voice breaking. At least not by blood. My leg suddenly felt unsteady. What do you mean? Ian stepped closer, gripping my arms as though grounding both of us. I found our adoption papers, he said, pointing to the documents inside the box. We weren't just adopted, we were adopted separately. On separate dates. From different places. My breath caught like a punch to the chest. No, that doesn't make sense. We look alike. Similar, he corrected, not identical. This can't be real, I whispered. He looked at me with raw, exhausted grief. I didn't want to believe it either. I stumbled back, shaking my head. Why would they lie? Why would they call us twins? Why hide something like this? Ian's eyes darkened. Because they thought it would protect us. Or maybe because they were scared we'd feel differently about each other if we knew the truth. His voice strained on the last words. A sudden clarity cut through me. That's why you've been pulling away, I whispered. That's why you've been scared around me. He didn't deny it. Instead, he looked at the floor, ashamed. Everything I thought was forbidden, everything I thought was wrong, it wasn't what I thought it was. But it still felt like something I wasn't allowed to feel. I felt a tremor run through me. He lifted his head, eyes red, vulnerable, terrified. For months, he whispered, I've been fighting feelings I didn't understand. Feelings I thought were breaking some unspoken rule. And when I found that box, when I learned the truth, it didn't make the feelings go away. It made them worse. I stood there, heart hammering painfully, breath unsteady. Ian, I breathed. What feelings? He hesitated, every second stretching thin and sharp. Feelings I shouldn't have for my brother, he whispered, except, you're not really my brother. And that just made everything even more confusing. The bulb above us flickered again, plunging the attic into momentary darkness. When the light returned, I saw the tears on his face. I tried to run from it, he said, voice trembling. I tried to convince myself it was just stress, or loneliness, or imagination. But every time I saw you, every time you laughed, or looked at me, or asked why I was acting weird, I felt this pull. Something I didn't have a name for. Something I didn't want to feel. And I hated myself for it. I felt frozen, my thoughts scattering like shards of glass. Ian, I whispered, why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I didn't want to lose you, he choked. Because I didn't want you to think I was disgusting. Because I didn't know how to carry this alone. His voice broke completely, and because I knew that once you heard this, he whispered, nothing between us would ever go back to normal. I took a shaky breath. Ian, what exactly are you telling me? He looked at me, really looked at me, with a painful vulnerability I'd never seen in anyone. That I'm not who you think I am, he whispered. And that I don't think of you the way you think I do. The attic was silent except for our uneven breathing. I stared at him, confusion, fear, shock all swirling inside me. But Ian, you're still my brother. That doesn't change. His expression cracked. That's the problem, he whispered. I don't feel like your brother. Not the way I'm supposed to. The floor creaked under our weight. The rain hammered louder. An electric tension filled the space between us, heavy, unspoken, dangerous. I took a step closer without realizing it. He flinched, not from fear, but from resisting something deeper. The air felt charged, buzzing like static, and then, downstairs, the front door slammed hard. We both froze. Ian snapped his head toward the attic stairs, eyes wide with sudden panic. No one was supposed to be home, he breathed. The footsteps below were slow, deliberate, moving deeper into the house. My pulse spiked. Who is that? I whispered. Ian grabbed my wrist, grip trembling. We're not alone. The attic light flickered again, once, twice, then went out. Darkness swallowed us whole. If you want, I can continue immediately with the falling action, 600 to 800 words, filled with fear, emotional aftermath, an escalating mystery. The darkness hit so suddenly that for a moment I couldn't tell if my eyes were open or closed. The attic swallowed every shape, every color, every certainty. Only the cold draft against my skin reminded me the world was still there. Ian. I whispered. His hand tightened around my wrist, shaking, but steady enough to tell me he was still beside me. I'm here, he breathed. Don't move. Below us, the slow footsteps continued, measured, heavy, as if the person downstairs was exploring the hallway deliberately, one creaking board at a time. My heartbeat rattled against my ribs. The air felt colder, thicker. We should hide, I whispered. We're already in the attic, he murmured. There's nowhere else to go. A soft click echoed from below, like someone opening a door. Ian's fingers tightened on mine. Even in the dark, I could feel the frantic rhythm of his pulse. 2 weeks of secrets. 2 weeks of guilt. 2 weeks of being afraid of himself. Now, suddenly, something else was intruding on the moment he'd been terrified to reach. Ian, I whispered, just tell me, what's happening? Why would someone be here? I don't know. But his voice trembled in a way that told me he wasn't entirely sure of it. We stood still, blind, tense, breathing quietly. My shoulder brushed his, and even in the suffocating fear, I felt the slight jolt between us. A reminder of everything he had just confessed. A reminder that nothing between us felt simple anymore. I wasn't scared of him, but I was scared for him and terrified of the truth waiting in that box. Ian, I whispered slowly, what was Mom hiding from us? Why those papers? Why lie all these years? He exhaled shakily. I think they were afraid we'd grow up and feel something we weren't supposed to. My breath hitched. Even the darkness couldn't hide the weight of his words. The footsteps stopped, right beneath the attic ladder. We froze. A long silence stretched, so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Then, a faint scrape. Someone was touching the bottom of the attic ladder. Ian inhaled sharply. They're coming up. My chest constricted. The wooden frame creaked as weight shifted below it, like someone preparing to climb. Ian tugged my arm gently. Over here, he whispered, guiding me back into a darker corner behind a stack of old trunks. We pressed close, not by desire, not by choice, but simply because the space was too narrow to stand apart. I could feel his breath near my ear, fast and shallow. Ian, listen to me, I whispered, swallowing hard. What you told me. I'm not angry. And I don't hate you. I'm just trying to. That's exactly what I was afraid of, he whispered back. You're trying to protect me. You always do. Even when you shouldn't. I'm not protecting you from yourself, I said. I'm trying to understand. The ladder creaked. A single step, then another. Someone was climbing. I felt Ian's hand slip down to mine again, not pulling, not gripping, just seeking, trembling, needing something to hold onto. You shouldn't understand, he whispered, voice cracking. You shouldn't feel anything. Not after what I said. I hesitated, but before I could answer, a heavy boot hit the attic floor. I clamped my other hand over my mouth to muffle a gasp. Ian leaned in closer, barely breathing. Don't move, he whispered against my shoulder. The attic floor creaked again, slow footsteps, scanning the space. I could hear the faint rustle of someone shifting weight, the soft thud of a box being nudged aside. Then, they paused, right near the beam that hid us. I squeezed Ian's trembling hand. He squeezed back, a silent apology, a silent plea, a silent acknowledgement that this moment, their secret, this house, this tension, was spiraling into something neither of us were ready for. A shadow passed on the other side of the trunk. A faint breath. A grunt. Then, footsteps again, retreating. The person walked back toward the attic ladder, stopped, waited. We waited too, frozen, barely breathing, until finally the ladder creaked again under their weight, descending, step by step, slow, measured, gone. Ian exhaled so quietly I almost didn't hear it. The tension didn't break, it just thinned enough for my lungs to work again. We can't stay up here, he whispered shakily. Whoever that was, they weren't looking for old boxes. My throat felt tight. Then what were they looking for? Ian turned toward the dark. Toward me, though I couldn't see his expression. I think, he whispered, they were looking for us. My skin prickled, but before I could respond, a sound rose from downstairs, a voice. A familiar one. Boys? We need to talk. Ian stiffened beside me, because the voice wasn't a stranger's. It was our mother's, and she wasn't supposed to be home. If you want, I can continue with the conclusion. Cliffhanger, 400 to 600 words, ending with a dramatic unresolved twist that sets up part 2. We stayed frozen for several seconds after the voice drifted up through the floor, soft, familiar, impossibly calm. Boys? Come downstairs. Ian's fingers slackened in mine. "That's impossible," he whispered. "She wasn't supposed to return until tomorrow night." But the voice downstairs called again, gently this time, like she'd known exactly where we were all along. "Ian? Come here, sweetheart." He flinched at the word. I felt it like a physical pull. We stepped out from behind the trunk slowly, as though any sudden movement might shatter the fragile silence. The attic bulb flickered back on, humming softly, as if pretending it hadn't abandoned us minutes ago. Ian stared at the ladder, his breathing uneven, his eyes wide and lost. "You think she knows?" he whispered. I swallowed hard. She sounded too calm. Like she expected us to be hiding. Ian dragged a hand through his hair, pacing a short, frantic line on the dusty floor. The box of documents sat open behind us, its contents no longer just secrets, they were consequences. "Does she know I found it?" he muttered. "Does she know what I told you? Does she know what He cut himself off, pressing both hands against his forehead. "Ian," I said gently, "whatever happens now, we face it together." He gave a small, broken laugh. "Together? After what I confessed? You shouldn't even be near me. Stop saying that." He shook his head violently. "You don't understand. Mom always knew I was different. She always knew something was wrong with me. And now she's here. And someone else was in the house. And we don't know who they were or what they wanted." His voice cracked. I stepped closer, gripping his shoulders before he spiraled deeper. "Hey. Look at me." He did, eyes shining, terrified, searching for something solid. "You're not wrong," I said firmly. "You're confused. You're scared. You're overwhelmed. But you're not wrong." Ian's jaw trembled, his voice barely rose above a whisper. "If I'm not wrong, then why does what I feel still scare me?" Before I could answer, Mom's voice floated up again, closer this time. "Come downstairs. We need to talk about the box." Ian froze, all color drained from his face. "She knows," he whispered. "She knows we found it." The fear in his voice wasn't of being scolded. It was deeper, older, like a memory he couldn't place was clawing back to the surface. We descended the attic ladder slowly, every creak echoing through the silent house. The hallway lights were dimmed. The air smelled faintly of rain and something else, something metallic. Mom stood at the bottom of the stairs. She wasn't wearing her coat. Her hair was slightly damp, her expression unreadable. "Ian," she said quietly, "I told you not to go through the attic." He stepped back instinctively. I didn't mean to. I know," she said, cutting him off. "And that's exactly why we need to talk. Both of you." Her eyes shifted briefly to me, steady, knowing, almost apologetic. Ian swallowed hard. "Mom, who was in the house?" She didn't answer, she just looked at us with an expression that made my skin crawl. "I need to explain something," she said softly, "before your father gets here." Ian blinked. "Dad? He's not supposed to be home until..." A knock thundered against the front door once, twice, 3 times. Mom stiffened. Ian's hand found mine again, reflexive, desperate. "Who is that?" I whispered. Mom looked at the door, then back at us. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "It's the man who's been looking for you. If you want, I can continue with part 2, new rising action, escalating the mystery, the emotional strain between the brothers, the parents' secrets, and the identity of the man at the door." Title placeholder: My twin brother confessed his secret. While our parents were away, true story. The evening had that strange, muted heaviness that only comes right before a storm. Clouds hung low over our house like a warning. The air felt thick, almost watchful, and the fading sunlight lay across the floor in long, pale strips. I kept pacing from the living room to the kitchen, trying to tell myself it was just the weather making me restless, but the truth was, something had been off for days, and it all had to do with him. My twin brother, Ishan. People always imagined twins were perfectly synchronized, same thoughts, same habits, same expressions. Maybe that was true for some. But not for us. If anything, the older we got, the more unpredictable he became. He moved through the house like he was carrying something invisible, something heavy. And lately, it felt like he was slipping further away without saying a word. Our parents had left that morning for a 2-day work trip, leaving the house unusually quiet. No footsteps in the hallway. No clattering dishes. Just silence and the occasional, unsettling creak of the old wooden floorboards. Normally the silence was comforting, but that day it almost felt staged, like the house was holding its breath, waiting for something. I kept telling myself I was overthinking, that maybe I was just tired. But even while folding laundry or scrolling through my phone, I kept glancing toward Eshan's closed bedroom door. He hadn't come out for hours. Why is he shutting me out? Did I do something? Is he hiding something, something serious? A strange unease prickled at the back of my neck. At one point, I even walked down the hallway and stopped in front of his room. I raised my hand to knock, then let it fall. What was I afraid of? Hearing nothing? Or hearing something I wouldn't know how to react to? The day dragged on in that strange, suspended tension until evening settled fully, casting the house in deeper shadows. I finally heard the soft click of his door opening. When I looked up, he was standing at the end of the hallway, eyes darker than usual, like he hadn't slept. He didn't speak. He didn't even move. He just watched me, as if waiting for me to ask the right question. My heartbeat kicked up, loud enough that I could hear it in my ears. "You okay?" I asked, trying to sound casual. But my voice sounded thin, almost shaky. He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped back into his room and left the door halfway open, the kind of gesture that wasn't an invitation, but definitely wasn't nothing. And that was the moment I knew something was coming, something he'd been holding in, something he couldn't carry alone anymore. What I didn't know was that once he said it, nothing in our house, our lives, or even our relationship would feel the same again. What was he about to confess? And why did it feel like the entire house was bracing for impact? If you want, I can now continue with white heavy checkmark rising action, 1,200 to 1,500 words. Just tell me, continue.